Greetings from the Iowa Beef Center, and welcome back to this episode of the Iowa Beef Collective, powered by StockGuard. For all of your risk management needs, we've joined forces with the crew there at StockGuard.io for livestock risk protection as well as livestock gross margin. Several other programs they offer. They have an online platform where you can get a portal put together and go actually purchase insurance on livestock without ever talking to anyone if you don't want to, or reach out to those folks at StockGuard, and they will take care of you on all your risk management needs. So appreciate them joining the team. Today we are zoomed in from Kansas City, Missouri with Montie Soules. Montie's a longtime friend, a former boss of mine, and one that I have definitely wanted to talk to since we started the podcast. Not necessarily about his current position. We'll get to that in the end, but has a very unique career in the seedstock marketing end of things. And if I'm being honest with our audience, I learn something new every time I talk to Montie, and we talk pretty often. So enjoy having him on. So Montie, introduce yourself to the audience, and you can give us a snapshot of your current role with the Shorthorn Association, and then we'll kind of dig back in time, if you will, on marketing seed stock over the years.
Hi, well, thank you, Pat. I'll at this point in time, I'm with the American Shorthorn Association. I'm their CEO. I've been with them. It'll be 13 years come tax day, April the 15th this year. And before that, I was the manager and general manager of the Starlight Cattle Ranch, and before that, Ace Polled Herefords and Ace Landing Cattle. So we had the same operation with three different owners, same crew basically for 34 years. And we were in the Hereford, purebred Hereford business, Hereford seed stock business, and that's what I did before I came here. And I really think it probably prepared me better for this job than maybe most people realize, because I was always sitting on the other side of the desk for 34 years, and now I'm sitting on this side of the desk. So I really kind of understand the needs of what our members and breeders feel about breed associations. I was one of them. So I'm going to start with this, Patrick, so you can get a good understanding that I have figured out one thing since I've had this job and leaving 34 years as a purebred breeder, that it is a God-given birthright to every purebred breeder to gripe and bitch about the breed association. You just have to understand that before you start. They're all going to do it, and that they're not attacking you personally. That's just the way it is. That's the business.
I knew we would get there to that point, and I wanted to kind of turn back the clock a bit, and I'm probably most curious, and I think your audience probably will be too, for the listeners that follow along. Let's start where you started. How did you? Because you didn't grow up on a 5,000 head cattle ranch, and this was something that you were, your birthright was to this operation. So you didn't start in Oklahoma. You ended there, but you didn't start there. So let's go back to the beginning and fill the audience in on, how did you land your first job, and what did it entail?
I grew up in Michigan. I grew up 30 miles away from Michigan State University. I went to school one term, and my father passed away, and I went back home and started running a custom fitting service and doing everything I could do with a handful of registered Polled Hereford cattle to pay the mortgage off, which we got done. It was a struggle. It was a real struggle. I think it probably made me better at what I do. At some point in time, I figured I needed to do something different and get out from underneath it all, and I was the market at that point in time had changed. It was 1978, and the opportunity came about to go to New York to Ace Landing Cattle and work for Alexander C. Ewing. I called him up. He was looking for somebody, and he says, "Yeah, I'll just buy you a one-way ticket." And so we went out there and interviewed for the job, and needless to say, he hired us, and I started there in July of 1978. It was an eye-opening experience, and it was something I'd always dreamed about doing. I had a lot of aspirations and a passion for the purebred business and the Hereford breed at that time, that I always figured I needed more money. I needed to be in a different position to achieve the things that I really wanted to achieve, and this started to give me that opportunity.
And so the duration in New York, how long were you there? Did you build the scope of the operation? Did you do it slowly? Did you try to do it fast? I think there's a lot of young people that have a very similar aspiration to what you did, in the late 70s. Is it different now? Sure. But I think lay the groundwork for how you went about it with your first outfit, and then we'll kind of transition into the Star Lake era.
It takes time. I mean, that's the one thing that I think everybody needs to understand. It's not going to be the purebred cattle business is not an overnight situation that you're going to win overnight. And I'm not even really sure the commercial cattle business is the same way. It takes a little time. And part of that reason is there's a 9-month gestation on these cows. So whether we like to admit it or not, that's part of the problem as far as time goes. When I got there, things weren't very good shape for them. I loaded 3 semi-loads of cows that they had paid a lot of money for that really, quite honestly, at that time weren't really going to fit. And we sent them down the driveway to the stockyards. When I finally, and he told me the total value of all those cows that were on those trucks, I told him, I said, maybe we better stop the trucks because I hadn't asked what he paid for them. And there was a herd bill on the back of every one of them, and the cheapest herd bill was $30,000. So he was willing to change. He knew he needed to change, and he had been waiting for somebody to just come in and make the change. I also learned a lot about the financial world by being right there where I was in New York and the connections to New York City. And I guess one of the things I really learned besides the cow world in that era was, I don't care what anybody wants to tell you, the financials of the globe start and stop in New York City. Don't ever forget it. The freedom that he gave me and the closeness relationship that we had, he actually took an old house and we made it into an office. And he cut out a big wide door, a 4-foot door between our 2 offices that we left open so we could talk to one another all the time. And that was really a huge asset. He was really to this day one of the greatest mentors I ever had to where I'm at, to what I even do today. And I guess I want to share, it's bigger than the cow business. The purebred business, I think most any business is really a people business, whether they want it, whether people understand it or not. And one of the things that he instilled in me was not winning ribbons. It wasn't all about everything that we do as a purebred breeder for success. But when we made a better way of life for the children that were on that ranch or that farm, from the employees' children that were on that ranch or farm, that's when we could consider ourselves a successful operation. And I think if we keep those things in mind, it'll drive you. And it really drove me to do the things we need to do to make the operation better.
Good stuff. So that ranch transitioned. You transitioned to a new owner. So let's take the next step, if you will, on how did it end at Ace and start at Star Lake?
Well, we were in New York for basically 12 years. We started a satellite herd. Somewhere around 1982, probably in that window, 83. In Oklahoma, we bought a small quarter section that had a really nice facility on it, and we actually had some sales down there. As we could see, we were getting handcuffed in New York for market. People had to travel a long ways to get to us. And it was just more freedoms that you could do more things in that part of the world. Plus, it was more economical. I still remember at the time that we made the move to Oklahoma, which would have been in 1989, 90, that a 16-foot stock panel in Oklahoma cost $16, and the same panel cost $42 to $46 in New York. So that was just, stock tanks were like a third to a quarter of the same price they were in New York. So just the cost of economics of making the move justified the move pretty quick. When we moved to Oklahoma, we did some research. We looked at a number of locations within the United States. When we got done, we were in northeast Oklahoma, just north of Tulsa. There were 6,000 adult and junior polled Hereford breeders within an 8-hour drive. And that's why we ended up there, because that was the best location we could find for the most market that we could find for our product at that point in time. When we were in New York, it wasn't bad. I mean, we had a lot of success. We would send a few cattle into New England. There were some things going on there in Connecticut and on up through to Maine, but there were some breeders and there more than what there was going on today. You know, it wasn't unusual for us to load a semi out and send a full semi load of cattle to California from New York. So, and people ask why California. Well, I could buy a $99 plane ticket on People's Express and go to California and see folks, and they could do the same thing coming back. So we just had to pay a bigger trucking bill. That was all. So we had a big market in that part of the world at that point in time, and we actually sent a lot of cattle back into Texas and Oklahoma out of there. So we had a number of successes. I think we started with our first champion bull was in 1980. I may get it wrong, but I think 84 was the first time we had national champion bull. So, and we actually showed through all the ownerships 49 national reserve national champion cattle during that 34-year span that I was with those operations. So one of the things that I don't think everybody realizes, especially those of you that are not in a high population area, New York can be tough for a lot of rules. I mean, first of all, just health regulations to get cattle moved in there was tough. And if we were going to have to spray a cornfield with anything, we had to post a sign at the entrance of that field 24 hours before we would do any spraying. So my farm manager would go out and drive the signs in the ground, and I'd drive along behind him with a pickup truck and back over him and put him face down and move on. We just couldn't help somebody drove over that sign if they didn't see it. Otherwise, the phone was ringing off the wall. It'd drive you nuts. After the first time we did that and didn't do it, we figured out real quick what we had to do. And that was the things we were up against. That's why we had to get out of there.
And I don't know that the climate is really that different there. Might actually be worse, but good to know the reason for the move from the Northeast to Oklahoma. But you mentioned, farm manager. Let's talk staff a little bit. You accumulated quite a staff over the years. Talk about your management of people and how that kind of morphed over time. Did they move with you? Was it all new staff in Oklahoma? How did that go?
The farm manager in New York was a local young man, and he was very good and very loyal. And he stayed in New York when we made the move, and he took care of the farm there in New York for a few years after that before he went off and did some stuff on his own. Todd Herman and Max Stotz were working for us at that time, and both of them came to Oklahoma with us. But they were both with us roughly for 30 years during that 34-year span. So through the 3 different ownerships, those guys stayed with us. And then we had a couple others join us. So when we dispersed, Josh Taylor had been with us, I think, 16 or 17 years, and Brad Prather had been with us for 16 or 17, about the same time. So it was important to retain staff. That's how you grow. Change in staff costs you a lot of money. Their loyalty, their knowledge was really astronomical. The teamwork that we did as a team of Max, Todd, and myself, we all knew our lanes. We pretty much stayed in them. And I would honestly say after a few years where I got more comfortable that I didn't have to worry about 2 things sometimes because I'm a bit of a worrywart, we could have a sale and I'd never say boo to them. I just knew it was all going to happen. And they knew what we needed to get done. And that made our job a lot easier.
So let's talk about the marketing side, and that's kind of the meat of this episode. How did you build clientele? I mean, you mentioned some of the issues that you faced in New York, geographically, but I assume when you went to Oklahoma that many of the folks that were buying cattle from you in New York stayed with you. What did you do marketing-wise to keep those people with you?
I don't think we did a lot different other than I had folks tell me that we wouldn't keep them, and that probably drove me harder to keep the same market people plus add new ones. This is not rocket science stuff. It's treat people the way you want to be treated. You needed to walk on their property, see what they had, see what their situation was, and then make sure that they got what they wanted. If they wanted a show heifer, a bull, or a cow, don't try to sell them something that they don't want. Make sure that you got something, and make sure it was good enough so it was going to fit with what they got. I mean, there were times when I would say, I haven't probably got exactly what you need right now, but we'll have it. And I use the example of a car dealership. It's got two cars on the lot. One's a blue 4-door and one's a red 2-door. And the guy walks in and says, I really want a red 2-door, or a blue 2-door, excuse me. Well, the dealer and the salesman talks him into the one he doesn't want. He buys it and he leaves. He never comes back to buy another car from that guy. He's done, because he's always had that car and looked at it and never liked it every day he walked out to get in it. So I think those basic rules of just treat them the way you'd like to be treated, make sure they get what they want. And in that era, it's a little different than it is today. We didn't have the internet at the level we got it now. It came about during that period of time. In fact, when I started there, I did everything on a card file. We put a computer system in New York and then moved it to Oklahoma and then upgraded a lot. Just personal attention, personal visits, being out and seeing people, going to their farms, walking on their property, walking with them through their cows, just taking care of them the way you would like somebody to take care of you makes a huge difference.
This will be maybe for some the most useful nugget that I've ever learned from you, and I was going to make sure that I mentioned this when it comes to marketing. You just said that they tell you what they wanted, and you said don't ever show them just one of what they want, and don't ever show them three. You give them two options, because anyone can walk out in a pen and say they like this one better than that one. If you just show them one, they'll think you're trying to shove something up, their hind parts that they don't really need. And if you show them three or more, they'll get confused and can't make a decision. I think that is the most masterful marketing in the simplest form ever. Where did you pick that up?
I think probably from my good friend Jimmy Johnson that sold tires, or my other good friend Ray Howes that sold cars. People, you and I are the same, whether you're trying to sell to you or whether you're buying, whether you're the salesman or whether you're the buyer. So don't confuse them. It's pretty simple. If they want to buy something and you've got something you want to sell them, give them a choice, this or that. Because if they take that choice, you're going to sell them something. But if you just show them the one thing, it's this or nothing. And if you go to 3 head or 3 animals or 3 things, they can't make up their mind. So just help them make up their mind. Most people need their hand held a little bit to give them confidence.
We've kind of, went over the ownership thing, but there was ownership transition. There's ownership transition in every seed stock outfit. I mean, there's a lot of them that have been around a long time, but in your situation, you worked for different people doing the same thing over a long period of time. Talk about who you worked for and how those transitions came about, or how they went, and how you learned and made them actually go smoother.
Well, the first gentleman I worked for was really a people person, and I've always regarded Alex as having a romance with the industry. So some folks can have a romance, some have a passion, some of them have financial. So he had a romance with the industry, which made it easier for us. He had some wealth, probably not as much wealth as everybody thought he had, but he was willing to take a chance. I can remember, I think it was October the 18th, Black Monday, back whenever, in the 80s or 70s. And I walked in with him. I says, what's this mean to us? And he says, well, don't go spending a lot of money real quick, but he says, if you find a really good one, go ahead and buy it, because I think I'd rather have it tied up in a cow that's worth a lot more money than having it in the stock market right now. And that taught me one thing, that when we had a down stock market in the purebred cattle industry, people were a lot more eager to go buy a cow because they could touch it and they could see it, when they couldn't see their money invested in the stock market. So when the stock market was down, it was really some of the better years we had. Like I said, Alex was a great mentor. He knew how to run people. He took care of us very well on the ranch and the farm, and he was the one that orchestrated our move to Oklahoma, understood we needed to do that. His other world that he lived in, he was a director, and the founder of the Joffrey Ballet, and his mother was the director of the American Ballet Theater and a past ballerina. And Alex actually, he sold the farm there in New York and moved to North Carolina to become the chancellor of the North Carolina School of Performing Arts, and that's when we went to Oklahoma. And we stayed there. We operated as Ace there for I think 2 years. And he came to Denver, to Louisville, to the national show that year. We had a great show. I think we had 3 of the 4 champions and won the best 6-head breeder and all that. And he says, I really don't know who the cattle are because I haven't been around them. So it was time for him to sell. So that's when we dispersed the first time. And I'd been doing a little consulting for a customer of ours that had been doing business with us up in New Hampshire. And actually the Thorndale estate was right there in Millbrook, New York, where we were with Ace. And he was from the Thorndale estate, from that family. That Thorndale estate actually imported some of the first Angus and Shorthorn cattle to the United States way back when. I went up and saw Dan in New Hampshire, and he showed interest in buying the operation. And so we shook hands and closed the deal for him to take over Ace 15 minutes before the dispersal started that day.
Holy smokes.
So I give him a list of cows to buy, and we went and had a dispersal. So I think I give him 13 head, and he bought most of them. So in reality, that transition worked really quite good. Alex was really good in making the price available to him and not try to get too greedy on it. So it all worked out fine, and we started with him, and we were going to downsize quite a little bit. And we got into it for about 6 months, and he says, I want to be just like Ace. So we upsized real quick at that point in time. Dan's background would have been a family that was involved with CH Publishing, and they produced a lot of the 1040 forms for the IRS, did a lot of translation, I should say, of all the government documents for other countries. And so that company sold, and he really made the family sold that company, and he had a fairly good, huge amount of money at that point in time. So he went ahead and bought the ranch. As the ranch, we'd done the deal on a lease purchase deal, and he bought the ranch at that time. So we were with him for, I'm going to say, I think it was 13 years, 12 or 13 years that he owned it, and we changed it to Star Lake Cattle Company at that time because he owned the Star Lake farm in New Hampshire, and Star Lake is the 90-acre lake. It's the largest lake in the state of New Hampshire that all the shoreline is owned by one person. So that's where Star Lake started. And then we just went ahead and started. And we kind of did a reboot. The dispersion of Ace was probably a really timely thing when we look back. Sometimes God takes care of us better than we realize. As EPDs were coming into the focus at that point in time, we dispersed in 92, I believe. Those cattle didn't probably have the numbers behind them because they hadn't been selected that way for the years. So as we dispersed, I think we grossed $1.5 million in that sale. It was time to reboot and start putting some cattle in that had documentation and look at numbers and go that route. So it was probably a really good thing for us to have to disperse just because we needed to change a little bit of what we were doing, quite honestly. You know, during that window, I would add, Patrick, that I think we had $3 or $4 million sales, just production sales at that era. You know, and that was back when if you had a $3,000 or $3,500 average, you were somebody in the purebred cattle business. It isn't like it is today, but I think I had $7 million sales over the lifetime of that purebred, the Hereford operation that we had, and those are some of my more proud achievements, I think, at that point in time, is of putting that together.
Yes, no doubt. Those were $1 million sales were almost unheard of, and I think our memories are pretty short. We're selling $3,500 commercial cows now, and have been for some time. So, your last transition was to the Blinn family. Correct me if I'm wrong, but talk about the next one to the Star Lake that I'm more familiar with, just for the sheer fact that we entered the Hereford business towards the end of your run with the Blinn family. So let's cover that one.
Well, the Blends were buying some cattle for their grandchildren. Actually, Jim Glenn and Randy. Randy was the son, and so they were buying cattle for Randy's children, and they were coming to the sales, and I was doing a little consulting work for them again. And I didn't do very much consulting work. The only other places I did consulting work, I did it for 18 years in South America with some customers down there. But other than that, I just really did it with 2 or 3 real special customers that we had, and I was too busy running the ranch to sit there and get tied up doing a bunch of consulting work. And so when Dan Thorne was getting ready to disperse, as he was looking at trying to get out of the business, it was the Enron deal come about. If a number of folks remember Enron, and he had a lot of money tied up in that, and he was thinking he was broke. He wasn't broke, trust me, but he was thinking he was. So we were able to get that transition made privately, and actually did it on tax day, April 15th. We closed that deal, and he got cash in his pocket. And he was happy with the cash, and he didn't really want to quit, but he knew he needed to. And Starlight today is now in the Highland business, and he's going back strong, and really strong in the Highland cattle business right now. So it's not like he totally disappeared from purebred livestock. And the Blinn family, they owned a plastics company that they had sold in 1999, and they came into our world in 2003 when they purchased the Star Lake operation. We changed the name to Star Lake Cattle Ranch for legal purposes and all that sort of stuff, and kept on going. I had learned I didn't want to have to go through making a new identity, so I wanted to keep the Star Lake name when we made that second ownership change, because it was a bigger deal moving from Ace to Star Lake than I thought it would be. And the Blends were there till 2012, the fall of 2012, when we dispersed. They were there 9 years. We had a lot of successes with them. We had some great sales, again, a few $1 million production sales. And before they purchased the operation, we'd started showing our carload of bulls in Denver. That's another one of probably my more proud achievements of this time frame. And thanks to the work of a lot of other people on the ranch, including Todd, Max, and everybody else that become part of it, we showed the champion carload of bulls for 13 consecutive years in Denver in the Hereford show, which I think is still probably a record for all breeds in Denver at this point in time. So we were very fortunate with that, and blessed to have the cattle that we needed to do that. We started having bull sales during that window of time that the Blends owned it, and that really helped us a lot. Took care of people. It's a people business. We sold those bulls with a DNA guarantee that we didn't put a bull in the sale that weighed over 90 pounds at that era. Now we're going back 15 years from now, so data wasn't quite the same. Genomics weren't really there yet. They were just barely coming in. So we just took, the breed had a little bit of negative on birth weight, so we just made it a point to not sell a bull over 90 pounds at birth, and DNA'd every bull that went out the door. And if you had a problem, pull some hair on that dead calf. If you had a dead calf, we'd figure out who the sire was, eliminate him, and get you another bull that wouldn't have a problem. And I never had to fix that because we took care of it before they got the bull bought. So that was one of the really good things. We did those bull sales over the years. I never had a customer complain about the bulls. Bull siren calves too big, because we took care of that right up front, and just took care of it right there and just made it go away. We used the numbers. We used the EPDs as they came. We started getting into the genomics as we were getting ready to disperse, as that was just the beginning of the genomic movement. I think probably in that window we dispersed in 2012. That we had a number of champions, again, Denver champions, and did well. And actually the cattle really matured, and we really bred some really good cattle in that window. When you asked the first question you asked about how long it takes, I can remember standing in the yards in Denver looking at the bulls, and Todd and I were talking, and I think Todd made a comment, well, we finally got the females to produce these bulls like this consistently. And what he was really saying was we had enough years of understanding of genetic power that we understood those cows well enough that we could manufacture and make those bulls through a mating process that made us probably more dominant over time. And that took us 20, 25 years to do.
And I think patience might be one of your stronger suits that no one really knows.
Well, that's true, but I think if you come into this office, they'd all tell you I'm not a very patient person, but because I really am not. But you had to have patience to do that, yeah. But the biggest thing that I don't think a lot of people understand, Patrick, is culling is probably the most important part of being in the purebred cattle business. If you made a mistake, get rid of it. Don't sit there and try to make it better. I mean, one of Todd's greatest sayings, and he's the one that started it, and I've used it forever. I still use it today. Is it's a little hard to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. So it's just one of those things. Make sure you got the good ones before you think you're going to make a good salad out of this deal. So just get rid of them. You're spinning your wheels. You're never going to get there if you keep trying to play and make something out of something that ain't there.
And a lot of people use the purchase price of the original animal to talk themselves into trying again.
And the purchase price has nothing to do with it.
Some of them just don't work. Cut your losses and move on.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you spend on them. It really doesn't. You cut your losses. The quicker you cut your losses, any business plan will tell you that the quicker you cut your losses, the better off you are.
And I've visited with you more than most folks in recent years, and I do know that you had a lot more financial management with the management of Star Lake than maybe people understood, and some of your owners, taught you that, and I have learned invaluable information from you on how you analyzed and looked at the operation financially. Is there any insight you can offer? Like what columns on the paper were you staring at that maybe most producers wouldn't look?
Well, I think you got to look at every column. And, I learned from working with all those accountants from New York and Chicago. And I remember telling the ownership that if you cannot cut your expenses on feed, labor, and advertising. And he said, well, what else is left? So those are three main keys that I think you have to pay attention to. You got to feed them, you got to have the labor to take care of them and do it right. And then you got to advertise them. One of the worst problems that we have in the purebred cattle business, agriculture in general, they won't spend enough on advertising. They just don't. Any business today, the old rule of thumb was 5%. I think it's probably closer to 10 today, maybe even 15 or 20. I like to use I use car business as comparisons a lot. You see that same car dealership on the news every night advertising their car dealerships or in your local areas. And so when you get ready to go buy a car, who do you think of? Well, you're going to think of two things. You're either going to think of them or you're going to think of the person that you build a relationship with that you already are buying cars from. And if that person has done you wrong, you're going to go to them. So you got to make sure you never do them wrong and fix anything the minute it comes up, and you can maintain your customer base. So you got to have that advertising to bring in the new ones. And we used a lot of American Rancher. We went on the American Rancher show. We spent a lot of money on American Rancher, but we got it back tenfold for the amount of people that we were able to reach out and do. And we're seeing the same thing today with what we get with Shorthorn when we see what's happening within the Shorthorn breed with the advertising we're doing on American Rancher. And so just getting on that TV today, you got social media. I've gone ahead and put one person on social media totally today. At that point in time when we were doing, at the end of the Star Lake era, we had social media going, and the owner's son was doing our social media. I think his girlfriend at that time was working for Angus doing social media. We had more followers than the American Angus Association had at one time, just because we were early at it and getting on it and doing it. So there is room there, and today that's free. It's basically free. Now you can pay for some of it, but it's really free. So this social media is really important to breeders today. Digital is there. If I was still doing it today, Patrick, I probably would not mail a sale catalog. You get it digitally sent to you. You might get some little pamphlet sent to you telling you to go here and look at it online. The cost that's involved, the U.S. Post Office, the reliability of it, let alone the cost of mailing. I wouldn't even dream about it. I'd be doing everything through digital work today. It's just a digital world, any way you want to look at it. And the world has changed, and I mean, it's been 13 years that I've been out of the purebred business of raising them, but I've still been in the purebred business here. We're doing things a lot different here than we did even when you were here 10, 12 years ago. So
Right.
it's a different world that we're in today, and I think people have to realize that, and it's going to change. And the interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people really understand is, I read something a while back there in Oklahoma, way back, and it's nationwide. Average age of a landowner was like 65 years old. I'm not sure that's changed a lot, but it's probably, they're going to be 60 plus. But the people that we're dealing with today, a lot of them are 45, 50, 55. They grew up in a digital world. They grew up with the internet. I mean, I had to learn how to turn a computer on. Now I got 3 screens in front of me right now. It's just changed. So to worry about that guy that's my age, I'm 73 for the most part, you're history, because he's going to be gone. You got to start You got to start focusing on that 40-year-old or that 45-year-old, 50-year-old that's in the industry. And digitally, that's where they're going to spend their time. I mean, I don't pick up a magazine hardly at all anymore. I look at everything on screen. And so I think this digital, even the Farm Journal, all the magazines have a digital advertising space. I think that's more valuable than print, quite honestly. There's some print. I think a breed publication still has a use for print and probably always will for a long time. But over time, you'll see that change. And we're starting to see subscriptions already starting to go where you can buy a digital subscription. You're going to see that's going to be the only way you're going to see it in 5, 10 years. This advertising thing is going to change a lot, but you've got to give it time and attention. You can't just make your product and think they're going to come up the driveway to you because you're you. You got to go see them. You got to go get out there and get your product out there so they can see it. A cow show is really a trade show. Yeah, we're all going to go to win if we're competitive, but it's really a trade show. And if you'll think of it as a trade show, you'll be a lot happier.
Good stuff. I've never actually looked at it that way, but I understand exactly what you're saying. We'll close, and I want to kind of transition to your current career and talk about becoming the CEO of American Shorthorn and how you took managing an operation like Ace and Star Lake and applied it to, as you said, the other side of the desk.
Well, I think I had a compassion for the breeders, number one. I understood them. I think that helped a lot. When I got here, things were really, quite honestly, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody at all, they just weren't kept up with the times, whatever, at that point in time. So we needed to get up to speed with a number of things. In the process of doing that, it became a people business again. It is nothing more than a people business. And as we changed some of the rules and went into our whole herd reporting processes, as we got those committees, were fairly good size and got them to grow, they bought in. It made it a lot easier to transition forward into that because they were like spokesmen for us out here in the field taking care of things. We didn't have the money, a small breed association. The money just wasn't there for fieldmen, which you were one of those over time. And you didn't disagree with that, really.
Not a bit.
It really is not there, but we can still take care of a lot of that with social media, with telephones, Zoom calls, just all the things that we can that's out there today. It's still not going to be the same as walking on somebody's place. The world has changed a lot. I'm not sure it's needed at the same level that it used to be, but there's still a personal connection that really is important. To a breeder, I think they got more responsibility for that than maybe even the breed association, because a breed association's real role is to keep the integrity of the herd book, keep track of the performance of data, and keep the integrity of that performance data. And if there's anything left over, then we can go ahead and promote the breed. That's what the real role of a purebred breed organization. I don't care whether it's cattle, Holsteins, or or what species it is. That's really what it is. Now, your horse industry is going to be a little different. I think a lot of I've figured out from being part of the NPLC, National Livestock Publication, or not, excuse me, the NPLC, Pedigree Livestock Council. The horse industry is more of a event business. They register a horse so they can have an event to go show it. So, I mean, if we did that in the cattle world, and actually the swine, the combined swine organization is the same way a little bit. They're really taking care of the show thing. Whereas a purebred beef cattle organization, we got to put a commercial basis underneath these cattle. The show cattle and the top end cattle will become worth twice as much as soon as we put a commercial basis underneath them.
Well, we've been having some Zoom issues throughout this call, but I think the gist of what Montie has said, there's nuggets in there for the producer of any age, from a marketing and financial management and people business standpoint. Montie, I appreciate you coming on. Always enjoy getting to talk to you. I've learned so much from you. Certainly one of my mentors in the industry, and thanks for giving us a snapshot of your career. Also, appreciate the folks from StockGuard.io joining us in on the advertising side of things. Follow us on Facebook at the Iowa Beef Center. Find us on our 3 social channels, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Appreciate you joining in for this episode of the Iowa Beef Collective.
This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/legal.